when I was DJing, I would drive for Uber. I would leave the club, turn on my Uber meter, pick up someone most of the time from the club I was just DJing at, take them home. Then right before I dropped them off, I said, by the way, that DJ was me, so thank you. And it was kind of fun.
That is Amani Roberts, also known as DJ AMRo. He walked away from corporate comfort to chase a sound that changed everything. What started as a risky pivot became a life-changing path blending music, teaching, and purpose.
It's not easy. It's very hard. Took a massive pay cut, but was able to work out. And I was able to get a professor job along with being a DJ, which was really kind of life-changing.
In his book, DJs Mean Business, Amani reveals how every set is a blueprint for entrepreneurship. Timing, crowd energy, and adaptability all become tools for building something that lasts.
You always have to learn how to pivot and adjust, but the music can never stop.
Today, he breaks down what music can teach us about connection, creativity, and resilience in a changing world. Stick around. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is the Inner Circle Podcast. I want to know what happened to R&B groups.
So much happened, so much. It's probably its peak in the 90s. And in the 90s, there were things that were happening that kind of started to lead to its decline. And a lot of it's written about in the book, but I'll give you a summary. In 1996, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 came out, supposed to diversify radio. It ended up having the opposite effect because you had like Town Square Media, Cumulus Media, and iHeartMedia bought up all the stations. They went on a playlisting format to save money. So you could be in Houston, Atlanta, DC, Chicago, and you're going to hear the same songs pretty much across radio stations because it was playlisting. What that caused was a lot of R&B groups particularly got their start in their home cities and then grew organically. But because of the fact that these home cities like a Philadelphia for Boyz II Men, Atlanta, TLC, Destiny's Child, Houston, and then Detroit with all the Motown acts, because it was more in a playlisting format, it was harder for R&B groups to get a foundation and grow. So that's kind of one big reason. Then I think you had the recession, the music recession like 2008 to 2013, which knocked out a lot of mom and pop record stores, which is where a lot of times people would discover R&B groups. They would go there for their meet and greets. So those are gone. Even big box stores went away, whether it was like The Wiz, Sam Goody, Amoeba Music, like a lot of those big stores went away. And then there was a disappearance of like African-American media. You had Ebony Magazine, Essence, Jet, Vibe. They all went out of circulation. Essence is still around, and they try to go to digital versions, but it wasn't the same. And that's a lot of earned media properties for R&B groups specifically. Then you had shows like the Arsenio Hall went off the air and Living Color went off the air, which would feature groups like that. Even if you look to BET, Video Soul was no more. So just lots of different media properties were disappearing with nothing in the wings to take its place. So those are three examples in terms of why they disappeared like they did.
I just got off the phone with a longtime friend of mine. We used to play in bands together and everything. And the topic of the conversation is how rock is dead, and this is the end of it. And it's very much like R&B. And, you look at the parallels, and it's very similar, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I think I mentioned that in the book, too. Like, it's very parallel. It's happening to other genres, too. I just focus on R&B, but rock is a very similar, it's on a parallel track. It's very true.
Yeah. What made you write this book?
I grew up R&B groups. I'm a slow jam kind of guy, I like to say. I grew up listening to The Quiet Storm, WHUR 96.3 in DC. So I have an affinity and love for it. As a DJ, I love to play R&B, funk, old school. And it was just kind of my love letter to like R&B. It was my thesis in grad school. I was deciding between this topic and then why there are no longer any saxophone solos. So I decided to stay away from the Kenny G rabbit hole, focus on this, and I love it. And I did the research, and the research just further, I guess, emboldened me to speak about it and write about it.
Yeah, it's a good topic. And it's one that I think a lot of people don't realize it because maybe it's not in front of them. And when you bring that up, you go, oh, yeah, that's right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I haven't heard any R&B groups in a long time.
Yeah. You're exactly right. People, when I mention them, they're like, oh, you know what? You're right, because they assume. But now it's more singular arts. There are R&B groups out there. They're just not as big as it was in its heyday. Because in its heyday, it was a week in July in 1997 where 14 out of the 20 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 Top 20, this is the overall charts with all the genres, were R&B groups.
Mm.
And then if you fast forward 10 years later, similar time in July, 12 of the 20 were hip hop groups. So that just shows you the shift was happening right before us and we didn't even realize it.
Now, you're a DJ, and some might say that sort of led to the demise of R&B and rock and whatever, because instead of having places to perform, all of a sudden there's a DJ there instead. So, what's your take on that?
I would respectfully disagree with whomever says that. I think, you
Okay.
have these pop groups and these K-pop groups that are doing well singing. So I think the two can coexist very well, very well. So I don't know if I'm buying that one there, but I would hear them, but I would respectfully disagree.
It's funny. I was in Tokyo and Singapore recently, and just walking around, all of a sudden you'd see a K-pop group that would be performing in front of a mall, for instance, and you could tell they weren't big yet. They were just trying to get their feet. And it was a really interesting experience. I hadn't seen anything like that, especially on that level. And it's like, oh yeah, this is the groups of now, what they do and how they do it.
K-pop has proved that the group concept still works and they can have massive success. Whether it's R&B group, pop, or rock group, it works. But if you remember, I think it was Tiffany, the singer, pop singer Tiffany. She was the one who got famous for singing in the mall. I think that was her. And so they're just following the playbook of all the most successful artists in the US in the past, whether it be pop like Tiffany or, like BTS, you look at some of their videos, they look just like a New Edition video, or Blackpink, you look at a lot of their work, it's very similar to TLC. So they're just following different elements of the playbook from US artists that were successful back in the day.
Taylor Swift as well falls into
Oh
that
yeah.
category.
Yeah.
I know her former manager, and he used to tell me stories about how she'd play in the mall when she's 14, 15, and then stay afterwards to talk to all the fans, even if it would take 2 or 3 hours.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's what grew her big fan base, because they felt they knew her, and they did in a way.
They did. Legendary.
Yeah, yeah.
She's continues to write a master class
Mm.
on the music business, on touring, and on the business of music. Like she's someone who we could do an amazing case study on. She just continues to kind of break the rules in a good way. And so, I have the utmost respect for her, her business sense, her music, her songwriting. So yeah.
You mentioned business, music business, and you wrote another book, DJs Mean Business. I haven't read it, but I get the feeling that most DJs are like most musicians, where they care about their art more than they care about their business. And this was to address that.
Yes, yes. I think you're correct, and it can be challenging because, as a creative, and I believe that pretty much all of us are creative, you really don't want to get tied down with numbers and accounting and billing and marketing and things. But unfortunately, you have to do that, especially as you're growing your career, whether it be a business as a DJ or a career as an artist or musician. Like, you got to figure out how you're going to market yourself, how you're going to grow your email list through a lead magnet, get your website, and just also learn the business of music. I teach music business at Cal State University Fullerton. The first day of class, I go over the two sides of a song, whether it be 200% the music composition and the song recording side. And it's a fact. It's been proven like 85 to 90% of current artists don't even know that. And that's basic. And that's what you know. And then you get into publishing and how you need to hold on to your publishing. So if 5 or 6 or 7 years later you want your song placed in a movie, well, that can pay you long money. Or, and I always forget her name, Running Up That Hill, Kate Bush. She's a great example because 30 years after she released that song, it reverted back to her through her reversion and her label. So now she gets to place it in Stranger Things and she gets to cash out and get a lot more money than she would have. But we just have to continue to educate the artist on the music business because it's changing so fast that they need to stay up to date.
Tell me about how you get into being a DJ.
I heard Biz Markie at a club in Washington, D.C., DJ Biz Markie, may he rest in peace. And it was amazing. Quigley's nightclub, we were down underneath like this bank, old bank in DC, and he had an amazing set. Part of his set was he played a lot of TV theme show songs, and we were singing along. And back in the day, it was like What's Happening, Facts of Life, Golden Girls. Back when they had like theme songs for TV shows where you would sing along.
Yeah, you'd
Like a
remember them. Yeah.
30-minute set. Was it Facts Life? You take the good, you take the bad, or Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. All those, and it was amazing. I said I want to do what he does, but initially I thought there wasn't a legitimate career. And so I went and continued to work for Marriott. But then every city I would live in, as I moved around, I would go see the DJs and watch. And finally, when I got to LA, I first taught myself how to DJ. Then I went to Scratch Academy and learned all the fundamentals and build a foundation. So that's kind of a story about how I got into DJing and then how I continue to grow.
But you made a big career choice. You went from corporate to creative.
I did. It's not easy. It's very hard. Took a massive pay cut, but somehow, some way, it still was able to work out. And then, I was able to get a professor job along with being a DJ, which was really kind of life changing. And it just continues to evolve. Released the first book, then released the second book. Now I coach musicians and artists and 9 to 5 creatives if they want to monetize their artwork. So it continues to evolve along the way. And I'm in a very good place right now.
Amani Experience. I was looking at your website, and it took me a bit until I understood that you basically run an agency for DJs.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I probably book less events currently for other DJs than myself, but back in its peak, I was booking a lot of events and everything. So it's like an agency for DJs. Still have a bunch on my roster. We primarily do like corporate events and then a few clubs or lounges. That's generally the DJ business. Exactly.
I'm wondering, how similar is that to I don't want to say normal talent agency, but a regular talent agency? Are there quirks?
Yeah, they're quirks. You really have to trust the talent that you're going to put out there that's going to be kind of working under your name. And you have to trust them first that they're going to show up on time, do a good job. They're also going to not try to steal clients. So, there is some quirks. It is challenging. That's probably why I do a little bit less. I'm more focused on other things, but it's still a part of the business and it works well once you get some good people and good team members.
Have you ever noticed that mixing vocals is often the hardest part of getting a track to sound right? You boost, you compress, you add effects, and it still doesn't feel professional. So, to make it easier, I put together a simple mini course on vocal mixing that walks you through the exact steps to get the vocals sounding clear and upfront. If you're interested, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to today's conversation. Give me the essence of DJs Mean Business.
It takes you through the time slots of a DJ set from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. at a famous club in LA. And each 15 minutes, it relates to growing a business. So, for example, 10 p.m. to 10:15, you're just arriving. So you're trying to figure out who's there and keep them there because you want to grow the audience for the whole day. In business, you're trying to figure out who's your ideal avatar, go after them and grow from there. If we fast forward to 11 p.m., something always goes wrong in the DJ booth, whether it's a dusty needle, computer issues, speaker issues. So you always have to learn how to pivot and adjust, but the music can never stop. Same thing in business. Maybe you're selling a certain product, but another service is more popular. Well, how do you shift, but don't close down the business and start it up again? Then you get to midnight, which is prime time. How do you keep the hits going, hit after hit, keep the crowd going, singing along while still cycling through the bar? And in business, how do you grow revenue week over week, month over month, year over year? Just keep the revenue growing. That's kind of the first three. Then at 2 a.m., it's over. So then you get feedback. When I was DJing, I would drive for Uber. So I would leave the club, turn on my Uber meter, pick up someone most of the time from the club I was just DJing at, take them home. While we were driving home, I'd be like, oh, so what do you think of the music, the DJ? They'd say the honest opinion. Then right before I dropped them off, I said, by the way, that DJ was me, so thank you. And it was kind of fun. That was a fun thing. Same thing in business. You have to get feedback. What's working, what's not working? How can you improve? So that's generally 4 chapters, but there's like, I think there's like 16 chapters that goes through different 15-minute slots and tells you a story along the way.
That's a great idea to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Reading the crowd is such a big part of any performer. Basically, you have to read the crowd and understand what they want and give it to them. But for a DJ, again, differences in reading the crowd?
Reading a crowd is an acquired skill. It takes many, many times of being in different environments, seeing what songs work for what demographic part of the population that's there, what doesn't work. There are no 2 crowds that are ever the same because people will be in different moods and different times of their lives. There's no 2 crowds that are ever the same. but you have to learn what works, what doesn't work. You get a lot of requests. Do you take the request? Do you not? I love the model kind of three for them, one for me. Three songs for them. I sneak in one that I love. That'll keep you sane. And just read the crowd. And sometimes if you have a crowd and they're really into pop and you start playing pop and they really get into it, you got to follow that pathway down until they get bored. And so just being flexible enough to do that, have the library of songs available to you that you can switch and test out and do things. And reading a crowd is only acquired through being in person and being around people, the energy. You can't acquire this from like being a bedroom DJ or even from like streaming, doing live streaming, which I did a lot of, particularly during the pandemic. Like that just you just don't know how to read a crowd through that. You have to be in person around people.
I read one of your blog posts about I think it was the 10 items that every DJ needs.
Yes.
I don't know, not what you call essential items. These were other items that are essential when they're needed for the most part. But tell me, how much does gear matter? Because it seems like you can make this work under a lot of different circumstances.
You can. I think as we go day by day, it matters less and less. You just need, the proper AV setup. You can have a controller, turntables, mixers. It doesn't matter as long as you have the music there with you and a way to project the music through the sound. So gear matters less and less each day, in each week, in each year, but you still need the basics like how to mix, how to program, how you're looking, presenting yourself. Of course, on that list, my favorite thing on that list is probably tape because tape can save you. So that's one of my favorite things. And just backups. Nowadays we have our phones. You can maybe use Bluetooth, but just have a backup in case, as I was mentioning in the book, the music goes down. You have something to plug in so you can keep something going. That's probably the key. Backup computer, maybe iPad. So gear matters less, but you still need to know how to adjust to the fly if part of your gear does not work.
I'm really surprised when you say that something always goes wrong. And I know from playing in bands for a lot of my life and doing gigs, after a while, it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you know, it got to be where you knew where everything was and the equipment you had was reliable and it rarely, broke.
Well, I would say as you get more experience, what might have taken you an hour to fix before will take you 2 minutes. What might take you 35 or 45 minutes to troubleshoot live, you know what's happening, you can fix it on the fly or adjust quickly. So the time period it takes for you to troubleshoot shrinks tremendously. So it's like an afterthought now. Like now, if I go tonight to DJ and the computer's not loading up, I know to reboot, switch something on the like the controller or the mixer and do things. Whereas before, when you were first presented with that problem, you're like, oh no, how do I got to figure this out? What's the signal flow? Where now I'm used to it. So I can just switch, and we're off and running.
You're a professor, you mentioned it, Cal State Fullerton. Is that where you've always been, or were you a professor other places as well?
This is pretty much almost 7 years ago. This past August, I started there teaching. Actually ended up creating the music business class there. It took us 3 years to get it through the system. Lots of like politics and meetings and the red tape when you're trying to create a class for a educational institution. But and it's funny because they said, "Oh, when you start this class, you might have 12 or 13 people that will sign up. It'll take you a while to get it over 30." First class, 34 students. And we've been running at that level pretty much. Now we're in our fifth cohort, I think, fifth or sixth cohort. So it's going well. The class is so successful. We have a music business minor there. I love teaching it. People are now coming from across the country or world to take the class and be there. So it's one of my most favorite accomplishments, teaching. I love it. And I just enjoy it every week.
I was a teacher as well for a lot of my life, and on a college level, university level. And one of the things that made me want to stop, and let me just compare notes with you here, was it seemed like around year 4, when you're teaching the same thing, before the question is asked, you know what it's going to be. And that bothered me, the lack of, something different here, out of the box. Do you experience that?
I'm fortunate because the class I first started to teach There, I taught it for 3 or 4 years. I don't teach anymore, so I had to switch. They switched me to another class, then another class, then I had the music business. Now, for the last like 3 or 4 years, I've pretty much been in the same classes, but I try to learn from the students as much as I teach them. So I'll switch things up, try to do projects a different way. We have different discussions. So I relate to, you get the same questions, but it's a new group of students, and we have a very different student who was maybe the last 3 or 4 years, because most of those students were going to high school in the pandemic, graduated, now they started college in the pandemic. So they're different. Now we have some newer ones that maybe weren't starting college in the pandemic, so it's new. But most of them, because I teach 400 level classes, so most of them are seniors. So they're already on their way. So they're excited about learning about what life they'll like after graduation. So they're a little bit serious. So it helps. But if I was teaching 200 or 300 level classes, I'm sure I would run into more what you did. But so far, so good. I don't really have that issue. And the students keep me on my toes. So I like learning from them, and it keeps it fresh.
So you mentioned about the students that were in high school during COVID. How are they different?
Well, first of all, they don't put their cameras on during the Zoom Zoom classes. That's the first thing. They also it takes them a little longer to speak up. They're more introverted. They engage less. They're not as skilled in terms of working on teams and group projects as other students. So we really have to push them. And they're just quieter. That's generally speaking. So that's kind of what it is. So we really have to try to bring them out, draw them out. They do love games and gamification. That'll get them going. That's what I'm noticing. So it's really the public speaking. We really have to do a good focus on that, because they're not good to presenting in front of people. They're used to like computer and just talking. Those are some of the skills that we're working to improve with the students.
Speaking of public speaking, you do quite a lot of it. Is it always on the same subject?
Usually it's on a couple subjects like unlocking creativity. I talk about that with any audience, primarily like corporate audiences through that. I talk a lot about the music business, particularly when I'm speaking to a music audience in terms of earning revenue. And then I also talk about just kind of the written word, about how to write a book, the process of book writing, what it's like in this current era. Those are kind of my three main topics that I speak about.
I've written 27, 28 books and gone through the process 50 sometimes, third, fourth, fifth, sixth editions. And I've gotten pretty fast, pretty good at it, as you might imagine. But one of the things that I found out, and again, just comparing notes with you,
Yeah, yeah.
um, it's a 3-pass method. So the first pass is basically stream of consciousness. And I just try to get the ideas down. The second pass is putting everything into, logical order. So looks kind of good. And the third pass is polishing, where now it's actually coming together. And anything beyond that, it becomes different and not necessarily better. And I found that this actually works in all types of creative endeavors. For me, I should say. I'm not so sure about anybody else. But have you found anything like that?
I like how you said the 3-pass method, because I always tell people, I say the hardest part about finishing a book is finishing it 3 times. First, you have like the first edit, which is kind of what you spoke about, just getting it all out there. Like Anne Lamott says, you have to have your blank, blank first draft. And then you have to do the edits again a second time. And then the final edits is when you're really polishing it up and saying, this is it. I know that done is better than perfect, because there's no such thing as perfection. And what trips up most authors that I know and I work with or I coach is that they can't get past the finishing it the first or the second time. They just get stuck in books, and things just sit in a file or in a notebook for years, almost decades. So I agree. It's really hard to finish. It seems simple, but writing a book is very hard to finish. We're not even getting to the launch part, where once it's finished, then you have to promote it and do all that. That's just as difficult. But just finishing it to publish, to get it out there and get over the insecurity and the imposter syndrome, in addition to writing and editing, it's a lot for people. And that's why it trips up so many people.
Before I forget, I want to ask you this. AI is so big in our lives. How has it affected DJs?
Ooh, okay. Ugh. AI. So I still firmly believe that AI does not and probably will not have the ability to read a room. And this is why I say that. I said, sure, you can detect eventually about people's heart rates and their excitement increasing. You can detect that on AI. But the beauty of a DJ is that if there's like 100 people there and there's 98 people on the dance floor, but there's two that are not, and they're the ones that you can't track their heartbeat, whatever, a good DJ will be able to see that person and be able to play a certain mix of different songs to get that person from standing on the wall to the dance floor. And I firmly believe that an AI can't do that. And that's the beauty of a DJ. Not only being able to read the room, but be able to draw people in who are not currently on the dance floor, keep them there through just playing a song and just getting them. And so that's what I think. Then, as a DJ, then when you talk about AI artists, that's another hot topic. But I personally feel that, an AI artist will have never been through heartbreak. They will have never been through loss. And there's something about hearing a singer sing about a certain lyric they've written that resonates with them deeply, where you can just tell whether their voice is cracking, whether they're singing in the wrong key, but they don't care, whether they go on do some ad libs. I don't see AI being able to do that. For example, Jimi Hendrix, when he played the Star Spangled Banner, people hated it. It was just, they didn't like it. Now, in retrospect, it's one of the best versions ever done. And so AI would never do what he did playing the anthem. Also, most people, the most beautiful parts of songs are actually the imperfections. Like say you stick to like a 1-5-4 kind of chord progression, but maybe you hop up to the sixth, the minor sixth, and do something strange. Like that's not predictable, and AI can't really do that and have it sound authentic. So that's kind of my thoughts on AI for DJs, and then quick thoughts on AI in terms of musicians and singers.
I'm with you on the imperfections. I think that's actually going to be a trademark of humans in the future, where now we strive for perfection in the studio, but soon it will be a badge of honor to leave the imperfections and the mistakes in, because that shows that, hey, it's the real deal.
That's where the beauty is. So yes, yeah, I agree.
Amani, what don't people know about you that you wish they did?
Ooh, yeah, I kind of put it all out there, like R&B lover, big Mariah Carey fan. In terms, and I'm sure at the end I can tell people how to contact me, but I love teaching. I love my DC sports teams, and I'm forever a student of the music business. I went to Berkeley College of Music for grad school, but I'm still learning. And like I said, like this past week, I learned something from my students I'd never learned before, and I was like, wow. And so I just say a forever learner. Yeah.
That's a good place to be, I think.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. What advice, and you probably do this all the time, but what advice would you give to somebody that's just trying to get into the business today?
Definitely talk to a lot of people who are currently in the business. Networking is so crucial because it's more about, because the music industry is actually pretty small. So it's more about who you know and who knows you. Don't be afraid to do internships. If you're older and you have to work, you could still do internships. Try to collaborate with people and just learn. Like, read, where's my book here? Like, read this book here is one of my favorites. Like all you need to know about the music business. Like just read this book, and it's on its 11th edition. So just keep reading, study, listen to different podcasts where you can listen to people who have been in the industry, because it's cyclical and people have been through it. So you can avoid a lot of mistakes by just learning and reading. So that's the advice I would have. I tell people stay curious, be very, very cognizant of who you have around you, because if you have the wrong people around you, that can derail your career or set you back for 5, 7, 10 years. So just surround yourself with some great people. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need a new room. That's what I'll say.
That's great. You mentioned podcasts, and you have one, and you have quite a number of episodes so far. When did you start?
So the Amani Experience podcast, that one started. Ooh, I think it started like in the mid 2016. Now I shifted into another one, Adventures in Business Live, with my co-host Manny Graziano. We're up to over 200. And I think it's just a good medium to interview people. Once again, it's like a master class with whomever you're interviewing, because you're getting to tap that expertise. It's actually a very intimate way of networking nowadays too, because it's very memorable. So that's how many episodes, and that's why I love the podcasting medium.
I got to tell you, you'll appreciate this. So this is number 599 that we're doing.
Oh, sweet. I'm honored.
Yeah. And what happened was we were switching to a different host, and all of a sudden, all of them went away. 11 years worth of podcasts disappeared. And I thought, no problem. They're on Spotify or Apple Music, but no, the feed was gone. So they were gone as well. So I panicked for, a day and a half. And luckily we were able to get them back. But, it was like, oh, are you kidding me? Do I have to start from the beginning again?
No, yeah, that's good. I've been there. So good thing you waited a day and a half.
Yeah, right. No, I would have freaked out otherwise. All right, last question then. What's the best piece of advice that maybe you learned along the way, or maybe somebody imparted to you?
I'll go with like the done is better than perfect, because a lot of times we get so focused on making every little thing we do perfect that it just prevents us from moving forward. And, whether it's doing social media content, if you look at the content you're doing a year ago compared to now, of course, not going to be much better, but that's only because you just kept putting it out and not worrying about perfection. And I just see so many people just so worried or in their heads about putting out content, writing a book, writing a song, trying something new, that they just stop and it just paralyzes them. So done is better than perfect is a good piece of advice, because that's how we learn. Like, you learn from trying things and not working, and you try again and you adjust. But most people just don't want to get in the game. So I think that's the kind of advice that really resonates with me now and can apply to so many people, particularly in the music industry.
Since you do so much, what's the best place to contact you?
I would say two ways. The first way is if you go to my website, amaniexperience.com/call, and you can fill out the form and reach me. And also another way is if you want to kind of stay up to date on what's going on in the music business with news, if you just text news to 301-638-8749, and I send out music business news updates twice a week. Those are the two best ways to reach me, through my news texting service and email.
That's a great place to stop, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.